Yeah, Maryland drops a heartbreaker in the regular season finale at Penn State. Our next guest was on the call for Big Ten Network. He is former University of Wisconsin standout Brian Butch, and he's with us now here on GCR. Brian, it's Glenn in Baltimore. It's great to chat. Thank you for taking the time for us.
Glenn, I appreciate it. No, always good to talk. This is the best time of year. College basketball, you can't go wrong.
Yeah, it's the best time of year, except when there are three guys with a chance at a rebound and no one bothers to get it, Brian. That's all right. Is the story of yesterday, this is truly how difficult it is to win on the road in the Big Ten this season, and don't overreact to any of it? Or is it, yeah, but you still shouldn't be blowing a double-digit second-half lead and, again, not collecting a rebound when there are three of you standing there with a chance to win the game?
I think both can be true. Life in the Big Ten on the road, it's not just Maryland. Illinois has struggled. Iowa has struggled. So it's not just Maryland that struggled on the road. It's just how good they've been at home. And that's why, you guys are in the situation you're at right now when you look at the NCAA tournament. They're not on the bubble. They're not worried about anything. They're in. And that's a thing to start this year off. Not everybody thought was going to be the case at all. There was a lot of thought of, okay, well, we'll just try to have a good season and then build from there. Well, you've blown by that, right? This is the first time, when you look at the program, you got program records, most wins under the first-year head coach, tied for most conference wins, most AP top 25 appearances under a first-year coach, most AP top 25 wins under a first-year coach. So you look at what they've done, you've got to be thrilled about that. However, you still have to close out a game, and I think that was the biggest thing that I took away from that game. There were a couple possessions. Penn State was making a run. They were hanging around. And the way they shoot the three, they do that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So now all of a sudden you need to make sure you have some good possessions. I thought it went isolation a little bit towards that second half, towards the end of that second half, and that's kind of why they were in the situations they were. I thought the matchup with Miles Dredd and Julian Reese was going to be a really tough one. It played out to be that way. It was kind of, Miles Dredd was in. Coach Willard decided to go a little bit smaller and go with Emilian, right? You look at those sorts of things. I thought that was, a really huge part of that. Now, the biggest thing for the tournament for you guys is Julian Reese has to be on the floor.
Yep.
Whether it's matchups, whether it's not, he is an X factor. Obviously, we know Akeem Hart. He's got to play better. Did not play well last night either. Hasn't played well on the road. In the losses, he's averaging 8 points. In the win, he's averaging 13. Everybody knows that's the X factor. How do you get him to play through that a little bit? You hope you see it go through the ball. The ball go through the net a little bit for him, and maybe get some steals. He gets going in transition. Those sorts of things.
Brian, this is the difficult part, right? Because it's been kind of easy to figure out Maryland all season. They play at home, they're going to play really well. If they play on the road, probably not so much. What do we make now, knowing that however many games it's going to be, none of them are going to be at home or on the road? What could we possibly expect from this Maryland team now that we get to the point of the season where they're playing all neutral site games?
Now, the positive is you guys have had some success in neutral site games.
Yeah,
and I think that's the thing that they take away.
Yeah.
Right? I think that's the takeaway from that is there's some positive there. If it was all, in Big Ten venues on the road, I don't know how Coach Willard gets a hold of his guys to get that out of their head. But they've had some success in neutral sites this year. So you rely on that. You rely on your successes. And I think that's the biggest thing with this Maryland team that you take. I like this team. I think this team is built for March. And the reason I say that, they defend. If you guard, you're giving yourself a chance in March. That's what they do. Now, the X factors are Julian Reese, Akeem Hart. What do they do on the offensive side of the ball to make things difficult? Those are your two experts. Jahmir Young. He's going to play at an elite level. He's done it all year long. He did it against Penn State. And I actually think that you guys, Maryland, has played better on the road recently. Haven't had the results, but I think they've played better. They're starting to learn how to do that. I thought yesterday's game was a prime example of that. Could have been down by double digits in those first 4 minutes, and I think that's crucial for Maryland, is those first 4. But Julian Reese took over a little bit, had the first 6 points, kept them within a 4-point lead, and then all of a sudden, everything calmed down a little bit for Maryland, and they pushed that lead out. Now, they gave that lead up in the second half. Penn State's a tough team just because of how many threes they shoot, style of play. It's really hard. You got to stay locked in for all 40. They had some bad possessions that led to some long rebounds, which then led to some transition threes. And when Penn State has threes like that going in, they're really tough to guard.
He is Brian Butch, Big Ten Network. He's with us here on Glenn Clark Radio. Brian, acknowledging it is difficult to win on the road anywhere, acknowledging that there is the floor that has been established by Kevin Willard in his first year. We're all very excited about where this program is headed. But this is almost absurd. They're going to go the entire season. Their only wins on the road are going to be over, truly a terrible, terrible teams in Louisville and Minnesota. They couldn't even beat a mediocre team on the road. Like, do we have to file that away at all? Like, is that something that, Kevin Willard's going to have to, prove next year? Hey, look, this is not the story. It's just a weird anomaly the way that it played out last year. This is not part of the story of the Kevin Willard era of Maryland basketball.
Yeah, I think it's too early for that. And the reason I say that is I think Kevin's going to get kind of some more of his guys.
Yeah.
And when I mean that, you watch Kevin coach, there's a lot of grit in him. This guy is a competitor. This guy competes. You look at those Seton Hall teams. If it would have been an issue in Seton Hall and we would have seen carryover there, I'd be more worried about it. But we haven't seen that. Seton Hall won a lot of road games. You know those type of kids that he recruited. So I think he'll put his stamp even more on this program. Like I said, what he's done in year one, to come in and do what he's done already, you guys absolutely have to be thrilled at where you guys stand. You especially in this league this year. Good luck. So, for where he's standing right now, 11-9 in the league, 21-11 overall, great season. Now you get to March. And again, when you defend, you give yourself a chance.
And that is the reality. And that thing, too, they have great point guard play, right, in terms of Jahmir Young. And now it leads the secondary question, which is, what do you do if you're Jahmir Young, right? You got the opportunity to take a fifth year. We're in an NIL era. And while he could probably go play and make some good money in Europe, it's not likely that he's going to be in the mix for the NBA given his size, although – my God, what a hell of a player he is, and why he was toiling away at Charlotte instead of being at a high-level program, I don't know. But what do you do now if you're Jahmir Young and you look and you see, hey, look, there's a top 15 recruiting class coming in. We could maybe do something special. And again, the game has changed, and you do have the option to make some money while you continue to play collegiately.
It's simple. I played overseas. I played professionally for 10 years bounced all over the place. Loved my time doing it. Great that I got to do it, but there is nothing like college basketball. And then you add some money on top of it, some NIL opportunities, and I'm sure Maryland's pretty well off when it comes to that as far as figuring some stuff out, especially with the way that he's played. It's a no-brainer to me. It really is, because you look at how what people don't realize, these college kids don't realize overseas, you're by yourself. You're in a different country. Time zones are different, so you're not connecting the way you used to connect with your friends back home. That chemistry that you have in locker room, it's a professional sport.
Yeah.
These guys have families and kids and all those sorts of stuff to your teammates. You're not hanging out in the locker room like you do in college. In college, you might have a girlfriend, but she's just a girlfriend. It's not a wife and kids. I know some people are married with kids, but very rare. So, hey, let's go grab lunch afterwards. Let's go do this together. Let's go to, hang out. All those sorts of things that you do in college. As soon as you become a pro, it doesn't happen like that. Everybody thinks it does on their way out the door, but it doesn't happen like that. So for me, my advice always is, especially for Jahmir Young, you come back and see what you can do. Your legacy can be built even more based on what you do in Maryland and at Maryland. Your legacy over in Ukraine, your legacy over in Germany, France, wherever it might be, it'd be good, but people won't remember you for that.
You can be eternal if you end up having a magical season next year. Maybe make a run to the
Absolutely.
Final Four. You'll never be forgotten. And with that said, I think there is a lot of feeling around here, Brian. If this is what Kevin Willard can do without recruiting, if this is what he can do, just trying to pull off some pieces from the transfer portal, which you'll be able to do every year. Is what could the ceiling possibly be? Again, it's disappointing given that they couldn't win a road game, but do you start to feel that Kevin Willard truly has the opportunity to get Maryland back into national prominence here in the next 5 years or so?
Well, I do. This job at Maryland was always a job in the D.C. area where you can recruit with the best. your players. I mean, what you have there in that DC area. I mean, it's some of the best players around. So yes, it is a job that was always a sleeping giant. I say sleeping giant because a lot of success, but where you can win national championships too. And I think that's kind of why Coach Willard jumped at it when it was available, because you have that ability to do this. So yes, I think what you guys have built, what Coach Willard has built, that foundation year one, you only have the opportunity to really continue to grow on it. Now, how do you manage it? How do you manage transfers? All those things go into play, and I get that. And the toughest thing is when you start winning, how do you handle expectations? Because we know Maryland fans. The expectations are extremely high.
Yep.
How do you manage those? This year one, the expectations weren't to do what they do. How do you handle those? That's the biggest question mark that I have.
Oh, it's going to get crazy. We're going to go from, hey, this was a lot of fun, into if you don't win a national championship in 3 years. I mean, like, it's just –
which is crazy, because in the Big Ten they haven't won one in 23 years.
Yeah.
But I know it's crazy. But the fan bases are great, but that's the one thing that drives me crazy with fan bases. I understand passion is a good thing, but being realistic too has to play a little bit of factor. And with fans, they don't have that as much.
Brian, before I let you go, I'm wondering if you could answer this question for me as honestly as you're capable of doing, knowing that like Big Ten basketball is part of how you get your bread buttered. Everybody talks about the parity in the league this year. Is that because this league is really good this season, or because the majority of the league is really mid this season?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think when you look at this, I think the league is good. I don't think the league is great.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, right, like I think it's good. It's not, I don't think it's great. But that being said, you put this league against the other leagues around, and now you have to evaluate. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Like against the ACC, you can put a whole bunch of Big Ten teams in there, and they're going to win a lot of games in the ACC because the ACC just isn't that good this year. Right?
That's fair.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it that way. Like, okay, now how do we evaluate it? You put the Big Ten in the Pac-12. They're going to win a lot of games. Pac-12 is not that good. The Mountain West this year was better than the Pac-12.
That's fair.
As far as teams, right? So I think it's how do you look at it throughout the league. I think I think in general this year is parity in college basketball. Now, I mean, what does Purdue win? You know, I think we've seen some vulnerability within Purdue. I think that's the thing. I think the Big Ten, each team has a weakness. Years past, I don't think they had as many weaknesses, and I think that's the question mark. Now, how have they performed in the NCAA tournament? They haven't performed well. Watch this year be a year where you get 4 or 5 teams in the Sweet 16,
right?
And we all look at it and say, "What in the world's going on?"
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
right.
I mean, that's one of those things. I don't think it has that strong dominant team where you look at, wow, how is that? How could they possibly lose to, you know, the 8th seed? How could Purdue lose to an 8? Well, no, I think we could all see that happen.
100%.
So I don't think there's going to be those shockers in the NCAA tournament. We're like, how in the world did that happen to the Big Ten team? We've seen it enough. Like that's their weakness. The team they're matched up with, they took advantage of that weakness because that was one of their strengths. And now all of a sudden they're out of the tournament. But that's what the NCAA tournament is. Like, you've got to have a really good draw. You have to play against teams that kind of combat a little bit of what you do, right? Like, and if they're really good at it, you get a chance to lose. Otherwise, you get a chance to have a nice draw that now all of a sudden it plays to your strengths because those teams can't, you know, attack your weaknesses. You're going to make a deep run. But I do think when we look at this league this year, I think it's been really fun. It's been really entertaining. But I think it's been that way because there hasn't been this, you know, strong, you know, 1 or 2 teams. It's been a bunch of teams that are just like, okay, we're good. We've got some weaknesses, but we still can win a lot of big games.
Vulnerable.
And I think overall throughout college basketball, right? Like, I think that's the thing.
At Brian_Butch is how you follow him on Twitter. Brian, is there anything we can plug for you that you've got coming up?
Not a whole lot. We've calmed down a little bit with the season here. I'll be down in the Final Four doing some stuff for my radio show. I do a radio show in Wisconsin statewide at iHeart 9 to 12, same time you guys do a show. But I do that, and I run a whole bunch of youth basketball camps. But just I'll say this, guys. Like, I love the game of basketball. I love continuing to to talk it. Anytime you guys want me to jump on, love to do it. It's fun. Big Ten basketball is fun, and I'm glad Coach Willard has the team going. Because when Maryland's good, it only elevates the league.
And I imagine, much like in my life, in your life, like in our life, it's like Lamar Jackson 24/7. I imagine it's the exact same thing for you guys out there with Aaron Rodgers. So
way too much. I am so done with it. We talk about it every single day. Why?
Yeah.
Because you have to.
Yep.
It's news.
It's the
people get it. Same thing with you guys are dealing with. But for me, just let's make a decision, move on one way or the other.
That's where I am.
I'd love to have far. Yeah, that's what it's turning into. I'd love to have Rodgers back, but I think Jordan Love. There's also a time, and we're getting close to it. The more wavering you do, that to me that says, okay, let's move on.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Brian Butch, really enjoyed this, man. Thank you so much for taking the time for us this morning.
Anytime. Should be a great Big Ten tournament. Should be a great NCAA tournament.